theme for this year is the extra mile, taken from Matthew chapter 5, verse 41. This being my first year for speech, I wanted to do a story that everyone would know. And being the only girl from my church doing speech, I also wanted to do a story about a girl. The thought came to me to do the women of the genealogy of Christ, given in the first chapter of Matthew. And after a lot of hard decision and looking at the stories of the other women, I decided to go with Ruth. Good choice, don't you think? Today we are going to look in detail upon the story of this wonderful woman. Now, we all know the story of Ruth, but do you really? I've literally read the book, all 85 verses of it, and I know that there's so much more to it than a fun story. But first, you need the backstory to Ruth. And if you've read Matthew, you know genealogy is important. Ruth was a Moabite, meaning that she was a descendant of Lot, the nephew of Abraham, and his daughter. And then later, Balak, king of Moab, tried to curse Israel through Balaam, the prophet of God. And ever since then, the Israelites and the Moabites didn't get along too well. The only reason that Naomi and her crew was in Moab was due to a famine in Israel. And when the famine was over, and as you all know, the husbands of Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah died, Naomi decided that it was time to head on back home. And when Naomi got to Judah, he asked her friends to call her Mara, because it means bitter. Naomi was saying that she had had a bitter life. Now, Naomi had a right to do this, well, with her being a widow and no way to earn a living, and, both her sons being dead. But I still can't read the verse without reading it like this. "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Lord Almighty has made my life very bitter." Drama much? Naomi had this wonderful woman, Ruth, coming with her, and will have an even harder life than Naomi due to the Moabite thing. And Ruth didn't have to go. It was entirely her decision. Her sister-in-law, Orpah, didn't go. She just led them to the roadside, then, weeping, said, "Bye-bye." But Ruth stayed and clung to Naomi and told her, "Don't make me go," which is the Abigail, Texas revised version of the opening to Ruth's well-known speech. And when Ruth and Naomi got to Israel, Jewish law states that the widows could go behind the reapers in the field and pick up the grain that the reapers dropped so that they could eat. And Ruth went to the field of Boaz. Now sure, this is a speech about Ruth, going the extra mile. But have you ever thought of Boaz, the man standing next to Ruth who went the extra mile? The Bible does not state the relationship between Ruth and between Boaz and Naomi's late husband. Most likely a nephew or something among those lines. Whatever the relationship may be, Boaz went way beyond the extra mile. Marrying a Moabite woman, not only was this completely disgraceful, it was also against God's law. God states in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1, "Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons." But Boaz was doing what God said at the same time. If two brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. The brother-in-law shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Brother does not mean, brother. It means next of kin. Boaz did what he could to choose what the right thing to do was. In the end, he chose Ruth. Don't you love a happy ending? But here's a cliffhanger. Boaz wasn't the only kinsman redeemer. I wonder what Ruth was thinking as she lay there. Maybe to marry a man she didn't know. Maybe he wasn't as faithful to the Lord as Boaz was. But knowing what a faithful woman she was, she might have simply fallen asleep knowing that the Lord will provide. And we know he did, don't we? Ruth married Boaz, and she was in the genealogy of Christ without a doubt. We need to today call ourselves to the level of Ruth, set ourselves to a higher standard than what the world thinks of us Christians today. The people of Ruth's time said, "You're just a Moabite. What can you do?" Well, I have a statement for you. I'm not just a Christian. I'll show you what I can do. I will go that extra mile and prove to you that I am a Christian saved by the Lord. I hope that today I have given you a deep dive dive into the story of Ruth and how she went the extra mile.